Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our 6 o'clock Bible Challenge. I've got an old song, but before I do this song, we're going to be looking at Psalm 4 this evening. So, He took my place at Calvary, died in disgrace upon the tree. The world is blind and cannot see. He did it all for you and me. He suffered great, said not a word, shed perfect blood, no cry was heard. By His stripes we all are cured. The victory is now assured. Why would you pay such a price for the man that I am? I never did one thing for you. Jesus came and He died as a helpless lamb. That's something no mere man would do. 3 days have passed since Jesus died. He rose again, He never lied. I've been set free, I once was tied. How great to have Him living inside. Why would you pay such a price for the man that I am? I never did one thing for you. Jesus came and He died as a helpless lamb. That's something no mere man would do. Why would you pay such a price for the man that I am? I never did one thing for you. Jesus came and He died as a helpless lamb. That's something no mere man would do. That's something no mere man would do. That's something no mere man would do. All right, we're looking at Psalm 4. And this is a song about a quiet time. If you've ever heard the word introvert, you know that an introvert is somebody that's quiet, extra quiet about things. And they say there are some things that introverts need in their lives. First, an introvert needs comfortable, quiet time with friends. An introvert needs friends that will come and not talk his ear off. They'll just be quiet. An introvert likes to know his friends are there, but he likes them to be still. And if you've ever been told you're an introvert, you're beginning now to think, well, let me check this. Let me see if I'm an introvert by this list of things. So do you like to have your friends around, but you don't want to hear them talk? You want comfortable peace around your friends. And an introvert also needs a quiet, calm space that's all theirs. They know they can go there and there's not going to be any noise, no racket, and they can just absorb the quietness. That's an introvert. And an introvert also needs time and space to work uninterrupted. If something comes along and they get interrupted, somebody throws a curve at them in a sense, that can upset an introvert. They were working fine, all by themselves. And maybe for you, you're thinking, wow, you put me in a spot where it's so quiet. The silence can be deafening. And an introvert also needs time to think before responding. Maybe you say something to him and the introvert just looks at you. He's thinking. Give him time. He's within himself. He is checking things out. There's a verse in Psalm 46, verse 10 says, "Be still and know that I am God." It might be that of all verses in the Bible, that might be an introvert's number one verse. Be still and know that I am God. That means that introvert, that quiet, spirited person, thinks within themselves about things. And while they're thinking about all that, they also consider God. There are some words in the Bible that kind of tell us to kind of be still. Things like ponder. If you ponder something. If you meditate. I've heard it described that meditate is like an old cow that chews its cud. Or like a deer that, will regurgitate in a sense. That browse, they'll quickly go and hit the browse line along the edge of the field and they'll eat. And then they go lay down somewhere and they rehash that food. And so an introvert, somebody that's learned to be still, will go and sit down or lie down and they'll rehash the spiritual food. They'll rethink all that they had shared with them. And so they're meditating, they're pondering. I've also heard that's like finding a great big flat rock right along the creek bank, and you turn that rock over, you flip that big flat rock over, and you examine everything on that side. Maybe there's a couple little snails, a couple little water bugs of some sort that are living on the backside of that rock, and you look at all that, and then you flip that rock back over. And now you're looking at the top side that was dry, but now it's wet. And you just look at that surface. And then, before you leave there, you look at the water ripples and the effect that when you turn that rock over, what did it do to the creek bank? That's to ponder or to meditate, think on things. And so Psalm 4 is a chapter that is kind of dealing with those kind of thoughts. And so, first off, the writer, it's David again. David wrote a lot of the Psalms, and David was feeling he was in trouble and he needed God. And sometimes when we're in trouble and we need God, we need the Lord, when we cry out to Him, we want immediate attention. I remember when I was a young boy in elementary school, I was running around with a group of 4 or 5 other boys from the neighborhood. And I honestly didn't know this was going to happen. We were about 2 blocks from my house. And right on the corner telephone pole at the corner of an intersection there in Cumberland, Maryland, was a fire alarm that you could pull. And one of those boys in my little group of buddies reached up without any warning, and he pulled the fire alarm. And it didn't go off there. We never heard a noise, but we scattered. I mean, we all ran, and no one said anything. But when he reached up and pulled that fire alarm, there wasn't any fire. I headed home. And I worried about that all afternoon. I was a little guy. I didn't realize that, it took if the fire engine showed up, he needed to show up right away if there was a fire. Hours went by, and I was fretting inside about that. And I remember that evening, my dad had asked me to take the trash out to the back of the yard, and it was kind of dark. And I was a little guy. I was a little nervous, a little afraid of the dark. But I took the trash, got the trash out of the trash can there in the kitchen, took it out the back door, and walked across the backyard to the trash cans with that bag. And I wasn't I was in a hurry. I didn't want to stay down there. The further you got away from the house, the darker it seemed to get. And as I was putting that bag of trash in there, in the distance, I heard a fire truck. And I thought, in my little mind, oh, here comes that fire truck. Well, the truth is, if that fire truck, it was like 5, 6, 7 hours later. If the fire truck took that long to show up, that house, or whatever was on fire, would have burnt to the ground. But I just remember I had a meltdown right out there by the garbage truck, or the garbage cans. And I didn't want to go back to the house, because I thought, I'll be in trouble. That fire, obviously the fire truck wasn't answering that. I don't know what happened. But in my mind, I just figured the fire truck, you pulled that fire alarm, that fire truck's going to be here. I ran for the house as fast as I could. I just knew I was in trouble. And nothing happened. See, like that fire alarm, we sometimes we treat God like that fire alarm. We pull that fire alarm and we want God to instantly be in action. We don't think much about God. But then when we really need him, he's like that fire. The fire, there's a fire, there's an issue, there's a problem. Pull that fire alarm. And we pull the fire alarm and, where are you, God? I need you right now. And look what David says in verse 1. He says, hear me when I call, O God of my righteousness. Thou hast enlarged me when I was in distress. You've helped me. And have mercy upon me and hear my prayer. It's like David is crying out, fire, fire. I've got a fire. Help me, God. Like God's your fire engine. And God responds. He says in verses 2 and 3 for David to be careful. Be careful. Be careful how you cry out to me, David. I'm coming. Trust me, I'm coming. It just might not be in your perfect timing. It's in my perfect timing. Look what he says. God says, O ye sons of men, you people, how long will you turn my glory into shame? How long will you treat me like this? You act as if I'm the little genie in the bottle, and you rub the bottle and poof, God's supposed to be there and give you whatever you want. How shameful that we might treat God like that. How long will you love vanity and seek after leasing? But know that the Lord hath set apart him that is godly for himself. The Lord will hear when I call unto him. And so God reassures David. He says, you can count on this. I know who's living for me. And when they cry out to me, I hear it. And I'll answer. But don't push me. I'm God. And you're just a man. Trust me. Learn to trust me. Then if you drop all the way down into the end of the chapter, look at there's only 8 verses. Look at 7 and 8. And David is basically saying, it's you, Lord, only that I can truly trust. And it's only you, Lord, that will truly satisfy me. He says, thou hast put gladness in my heart, more than in the time that their corn and their wine increased. And you wonder, what's that talking about in the time that their corn and their wine increased? David's talking about that. That's almost farming language. He's saying, oh, I've got so much gladness in my heart from you, Lord. It's better than, he likens it to the days of the time of harvest. You put your corn, you sprinkle your little corn in your corn rows, and it's months later, but boy, when you begin to cut that corn and bring in the corn and the feed and your garden, you're ready to harvest things out of your garden. It is a great time to look out there and know, man, the crops are ready in the field, the garden, the tomatoes, the cucumbers, the cantaloupes, the green beans. Man, it just makes you feel good. And David says that God has put a gladness in his heart that's better than that. I think we understand that kind of a thing. David used something that we would understand. We sow the seeds of some good times, and boy, we reap a bountiful supply, really, really good things. And then David says, I will both lay me down in peace and sleep. For thou, Lord only, makest me dwell in safety. You can't beat peace and sleep. That's 2 necessary things. And the last thing, when you lay yourself down to sleep, the last thing you want to hear is someone next door using a chainsaw at 11 o'clock at night. Or taking a hammer or a sledgehammer or a splitting maul and they're splitting wood. You want some peace and quiet. You might get up and call your neighbor and say, hey, buddy, you're going to have to do that during the day. I'm trying to sleep over here. But sometimes it doesn't take the neighbor to rob us of our sleep. Sometimes our own thoughts, our minds, can be racing and so full of things and worries and regrets and sin and things that we've been involved in. And so our minds and our hearts are racing, and we're laying there in the dark. Good luck sleeping. That's not going to happen. Your sleep can leave you. And so David says, God, you've heard me. When I cried out, you've helped me in my situation. And that last verse, he says, I will both, I will both lay me down in peace and sleep. The Bible, there's another verse where God speaks about sleep being sweet. Sweet sleep comes from having a clear conscience before God. Right in the middle of this chapter, look at verses 4 and 5. We skipped over it on purpose because I wanted to come back at the end. First, David says, stand in awe and sin not. So you stand in awe, you recognize, you remind yourself all day long who God is and that he's watching you. And then you live a life, you sin not, you stay away from wrongdoing, and you live a life like that all day long so that when it comes bedtime, let's see what he says. Stand in awe and sin not. Commune with your own heart upon your bed. Upon your bed, in those quiet, dark moments before you drift off to sleep, when you have spent the day honoring God with what you've said and done, the choices you've made, even the attitudes that you've had, God is well aware of that, and you are too. And your heart and your mind, they talk with one another, and you say, oh, heart, you did a good job today. You honored the Lord. And your mind says, yeah, I think I can be at peace. I can just relax. I can just go right off to sleep. So again, he says, stand in awe and sin not. Commune with your own heart upon your bed and be still. There it is. Be still. Don't get all worked up. There's nothing to get worked. God's in his place. He's taking care of things. And you've lived a life that day where you know you've honored him. Be still and know that I am God. And then David, he tries to encourage all the others to live like that in verse 5. Basically, he says to them, all you people, hey, everybody else, I'm the king, I'm leading the way, I'm leading the nation, but I want you to know God, where God is in my life. He says, all you people, offer the sacrifices of righteousness. Live right. If you want to give God something, live right. Stand in awe of him and sin not. Offer the sacrifices of righteousness and put your trust in the Lord. That's what David was encouraging everybody else to do. You do that, you live a life like that every day, and you know when you go to sleep, you'll find yourself being able to sleep and go fall right off to sleep. And God's in control. He's got all the troubles, the issues that are going on. And then you live right before him, and man, you can get yourself a good night's rest. Be still and know that I am God. Have a blessed evening.